when it comes to laughter or just joyfulness in certain activities is so therapeutic because one, it gets their mind away from thinking about the pain. They might still have it, but they're focused on something else, which is then a great way to even reduce some of the pain that they're having. And we know that laughter releases endorphins, which then has a positive effect on pain too. But the first thing that I would mention to patients is I ask them, what are you doing to have fun or get joy out of your life?
I've seen studies that anytime you smile, it diminishes the pain threshold. So
For sure.
you add on laughter, which is even more of an emotional, happy state. It only benefits even more from there. And I've seen this even in the interactions when you're in the clinic with certain people that you just joke around, they laugh, they smile. And then since you brought that up in the previous podcast before, I started noticing the correlation when I see them for the adjustment compared to what they said when they first came in. They said they don't have any pain anymore, which it works that quickly.
Welcome to the Functional Code, your go-to source for decoding optimal health. Join Dr. Addy and Dr. Jace as they break down the science behind pain, performance, longevity, and more, making complex concepts easy for you to understand and apply in your life. Your journey to a healthier you begins with understanding the Functional Code.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Functional Code, episode 42. Guys, we are super excited to bring to you the pod today. Doc and I are going to be talking about the importance of play for adults. And what we mean by that is hobby engagement, doing things outside of, obviously, work activities, maybe creative outlets, puzzles, brain games, activities, all the things that we used to do more often when we were younger, but as we've gotten older, it's usually just work, kids, life, and not a lot of play lately. And for those of you that feel like that's something that you've been lacking in your life, we are going to try to explain to you today the significance and importance to make sure you are doing everything in your schedule to bring about play and hobby engagement, and why that's so helpful for stress relief, creativity, all the other things we're going to bring up. So as always, I am Dr. Addy.
And I'm Dr. Jace. Yeah, we're super excited to talk about some of these topics because some of the stuff we're going to bring in like real world life scenarios that we've experienced, that we've talked to other patients and other people about, and just how enjoying life is when you bring play in, when you bring laughter in. So we're going to discuss understanding play in adulthood. Then we're going to go to different types of activities that can involve play. You probably are playing, you don't even realize it's just a activity or a hobby of some sort. Then we're going to go into the stress relief tool with play. And then as we round out, we're going to also bring creativity in play. Now, creativity, we're going to touch on that a little bit more because it'll run along the same lines as of play. And then incorporating play into your daily routines and the social aspect of play as well. At the end, we're going to go through a few different questions, but we have a few different areas of research that Doc put together. So we're going to dive into a few studies so you can see where we're coming from on both sides of things. As we first start off, understanding play in adulthood. Now, this is where, when we first look at play, a lot of times people think play is like kids playing playground games at home, video games. There's a bunch of different types of play. Now, that play's childhood varies significantly for a majority of people from adulthood because of all these responsibilities, activities like Doc said. So in terms of adults playing, whether it's respectful banter between their partner or certain small little games or challenges from teammates in a workplace, anywhere even to like athletics, sports, or even helping out your kids as well. That would be along the same pathway, coaching type of play. So when you look at both of those two different spectrums, you might start thinking of, okay, when I was younger, I used to play in the sand, the playground. I don't do that anymore, so I do these other activities, but that can still be labeled as play. So Doc, what are some of the things that you have recognized yourself in terms of this play type mentality attitude that you find yourself doing different than maybe you were younger?
For sure. And I think I'm going to use a child example and how you can maybe correlate that to an adult example.
Cool.
And how they have somewhat similar qualities. And so the whole play in the sandbox now could be playing in your workshop or woodworking space. So yes, it's more productive because you might be in your workshop building something for your house, or so yes, there's like a productivity kind of effect versus just playing in the sand. You're just having fun. There's no real productive outcome aside from just the health benefits of play.
Yes.
But when you pair it to that, yes, you're still accomplishing something, but it is playful because you get to play around with the tools. You're working with your hands. It's maybe de-stressful and it's maybe more therapeutic than you actually believe. So for those of you that use that as a hobby, that is also play. For kids that are playing tag, again, you might associate that to an intramural sports league or just a pickup league, whether that's basketball, flag football, or rugby. I don't know, whatever else you want to use as in adulthood. Very similar, absolutely. Playing, having a community aspect to it. And then, like you said, just respectful banter. Going and having a play date could be an actual date with your spouse or a friend get together. That's play that is absolutely needed. And I saw a study recently showing that specifically in men, and I'm sure it's somewhat similar with women, but men, they showed that if they met with their guy mates twice a week was very healthy cognitively and mentally moving forward as far as benefits show throughout their life. So twice a week meeting with the guys, super, super helpful. And whatever that looks like for your friend group. So this is very important to think about how to schedule that kind of hobby or engagement with other people into your day-to-day routine or weekly routine. And it absolutely has health benefits. So Doc, how about yourself? What do you take away when it comes to understanding play in adults, and what does that look like for you?
Yeah, for me, so I have two pups at home. One is a little older, other one's definitely younger. So they enjoy like just kicking around a toy, trying to make games out of it, just running around, playing on the ground. So that's play for me, and a lot of that is just getting some of this pent up energy, that stress that's just bogged in my system out, so I can just have my mind go blank.
Yeah.
That works really well. There's other things in terms of going out and trying a different activity, which we'll get to some of that stuff here. Skated on the hockey rink, and gosh, it's been a long time, a couple of years, and
Not a lot of ice down here though.
definitely not in Arizona, yeah, unfortunately. But got a chance to do that with my wife, and that was fun. That was something different. But going back to the point that you made with like that stay on guys and meeting with them a couple times a week, I started noticing this with my wife when she starts having more conversations or more hangouts with some of her female friends, that she was way more happy at home.
For
She was
sure.
more mentally there in the relationship. So that then goes back to the psychological and emotional component to almost re-regulating our system.
Yeah, for sure.
Because like with us being in a medical field and my wife being a nurse, there's a lot of stress that can come with that if you don't have an outlet to either talk through or having someone there that can relate, that can pretty much bring things down and weighing on the family aspect quite a bit. So the more that we're engaging with friends, that not only helps the relationship, but then it helps our mood and just life itself in all areas.
Yeah.
So
And the community aspect to most people's lives was heavily diminished in COVID times. And now we're post-COVID, and I think we still have yet to see that trajectory come back to where it was pre-COVID, just because we got used to being by ourselves or just at least contained to a house for so long. And now it took us a couple of years. We wiped all community events off the schedule for 2 years, and now we're like trying to figure out how to get that back to what we had pre-COVID. And I think what happened is we got so used to just not having so much on our schedule, and maybe that was okay for some people, but we just forgot how healthy it was to go out and meet with friends, have those events. Maybe your leagues that were up and running pre-COVID just aren't there anymore because they were like just didn't get revived. I don't know. There just still is a lot that we're still trying to rebuild from COVID times, and it's still needed and should be added back into the schedule. So Doc, I'm curious, if let's say you are stressed or you're just needing an outlet, what's the one thing that you usually go for and why?
That's a good point. For me, something easy, and this is why I have a home gym, is anytime I feel stressed, I either have to get up from what I'm doing, either change the setting. So I got a workout gym at home. So I just go do either some pull-ups, push-ups, different types of workouts, come back in the house and just enjoy life or play around with the pups. So those are usually two big ones. Also, just to get out of the house and get out of the comfortable setting and go on a walk works really well with the pups. Just having my mind go blank as I'm walking, things are coming past, has a calming effect.
Yes.
Which we know of, especially from different brain circuits and whatnot with that. But those are a few of the things that subconsciously I just find myself doing, and I've then realized I'm actually on a walk or working on, and I'm thinking about things. I'm like, how the heck did I even get here? Just when people drive, they don't even remember half the drive. They just remember getting to that
It's so
destination.
creepy too.
It's odd that in that way. But yeah, no, like those are a few of the things that I look at, especially for my emotional and physiological state, to re-regulate my system. And going back to the point that you said in terms of COVID, there's a lot of stuff that I know for myself personally, I became so reliant on just being by myself, and I enjoy personal time quite a bit. But over time, I started noticing myself having certain different anxieties, which I've never had before, and trying to get that back and calming that down is one of the outlets was engaging with people.
For
And I
sure.
think that's something that I think as everyone understands and knows themselves from the COVID standpoint and how they can address themselves going back to almost a true norm, it's going to be engaging with people in different aspects of life, not maybe on a stressful component, but in terms of going and play, going and trying new things in the community, giving back, volunteering. There's so many things that will help significantly psychologically, mentally wise for this whole process. Doc, what are some of the things that you've noticed?
So it's funny because I very similar to you. But when I think of my playground, right? As kids, the playground that simulate to would be the monkey bars and the slides and that kind of thing. But my playground is the gym. And so it is very therapeutic for me. I've had issues with substance abuse. I've talked about that in the past, but I've now been sober for many years. And the way that I used kind of my tendencies, I put it into more of a positive use, which was lifting weights, which became the substitute for substance abuse for myself. So I got very involved into the gym. I would work out 6 days a week. And during COVID was such a struggle for me because I did home workouts, but I just liked that setting change that you talked about, which was super helpful for me to get outside of home. And then I was more productive in the gym versus at home with my workouts. And when I stayed on a regular routine, it was just a part of that for me as well. And yeah, so that is my playground. I try to still work out anywhere from 4 to 6 days a week. And that just has been the key to managing my stress resilience, my cognitive benefits, mental health, everything. And of course, I want to make sure I can stay functional, healthy, and all the other things that benefit with working out. But if outside of the gym, my partner and I love to hike. One of the reasons I moved to Arizona was because of just the scenery change, getting up into the mountains, that challenge, that once I reach the top feeling of accomplishment, I get to stare out into the beautiful nature, and it is super therapeutic. Nature has so many ties to improving mental health, cognitive benefits. We had Sonia on the podcast, and she worked for Siriset, who the inventor of Siriset talks so much about how nature can create such new electrical neuronal benefits in the brain. Like nature is foundational for as humans, and so we absolutely need that. But yeah, those are the couple things that I like to do, and I'm sure there's so many others that people choose to play or to have. But yeah, I think you got to have those stress relief tools, and people don't understand how much it can actually help other things in your health, such as pain. And I know we'll get into that here in a little bit.
Yes. No, I love that. And Doc, I know we've touched on this a little bit, but in terms of the activities and different types of play, diving into this a little bit more, you might, if you are thinking this in your head, okay, so for those that are listening, okay, so am I actually incorporating some of this, what they call play, into my schedule? What does that typically look like for me, if I'm thinking about this at home, and this could be involved in different types of hobbies that you find yourself in. So I know, Doc, you said woodworking, whether it's working out. I would almost look at this, if you enjoy any activity outside maybe your day-to-day job, or even in your day-to-day job,
Yep.
you can have fun with that. But even trying new and different activities that you might not find yourself doing on a norm. Maybe it's a once a month, every couple months.
Yep.
Significantly can spark something new, and you might find new skills with it and new
Yep.
hobbies, interests that can push you down different pathways, which can be more enjoyable for life and you and your family.
Yes.
Doc, has there been any activities that you've tried that are maybe either new or that you haven't done in a while that you find yourself doing in recent?
Yeah, and this one came when I moved to a community for the first time when I was working right out of school. I joined a golf league, and that's where you have teams. Every week you meet up and you golf against each other. And I love to golf, which was another outlet for me, another reason why I'd like to move down here, because I wanted to golf more. And but it was something that I was missing, which was the community aspect. So like yourself, I go to the gym, it's more me, personal, just working out by myself. Nature, it's me and my spouse, obviously, but didn't really hike with a lot of people. It was just kind of me and her. But then now with this golf league, it allowed for that kind of, it's a guy only league. I was able to see them once a week. We got to talk. It was great. We also golfed. I love it. And that was just something that was super, super helpful when I was doing it. That was something that I chose to take on. I don't regret it. It was amazing. Down here, I'm still trying to figure out that whole aspect too. But that was definitely something that when I added it, created and checked off a lot of those boxes for me. And I definitely recommend doing something like that. So how about you, Doc?
Yeah, I was not as similar in terms of golfing, but oh God, this is a little bit ago. Tried pickleball, which was fun, and now it's growing. It's a huge sport. I definitely want to try to get back to that. A mixture of that, some like craft work that my wife loves doing at home, and then myself helping out. I find that I don't enjoy that as much, so I don't know if I consider that as play, but trying something new to see if it can spark anything of interest, I think is cool. And then just even getting out to our community center, they have different other clubs, whether it's painting pictures, whether it's building a birdhouse, and just enjoying the neighbors
Oh,
as
that's
well is
cool.
interesting. So any of those small things and activities, I would strongly suggest if you guys are thinking about, yeah, I should do this, put it on the schedule, go try it.
Yes.
Like if it's not on the schedule, or if you think, I should do this, or I want to do this, no, that is where you get, it's either going back to the podcast with Matt, where black or white. For that situation, just go head in on that one.
Right.
You're definitely not going to beat yourself up. It might not be the best experience, but it's an experience that you've had, and try other new things at the same time. So
Absolutely.
strongly suggest.
Absolutely.
Now, Doc, I know you brought this up earlier in terms of chronic pain, especially obviously we see patients that have been dealing with pain sometimes for years on end.
For sure.
And then even in the past podcast, when you brought up in the workplace laughter
Yes.
as a key medicine, which I thought it was incredible. I see you have a few studies and even some of your past experience. How is chronic pain and laughter connected?
For sure. I'll talk on my experience with trying to instill hobby engagement and laughter in patients with chronic pain, but I'm also going to give a study that I thought was very well done on how laughter in Japanese adults was this study associated to incredible long-term health benefits. First, experience-wise, with patients with chronic pain, usually they're stuck in some sort of psychological harm or change, and there's a lot more psychological to the pain than there is physical, structural change. When I would work with these patients, again, Doc said they've had these pain for maybe years on end. They're stuck in this loop of, I'm not going to get better. The pain is there every day, so I'm constantly thinking about it, and it becomes their life. And they ruminate and they catastrophize, which is just words meaning that they think about it all the time, and they're just highly fearful that it won't get better, and they're just thinking about it constantly. And it just absolves their life. And that's all they are now. They're a chronic pain survivor, and they become that. And they choose then to not do things. They try to rest all the time, and they just think that anything is going to exacerbate it, and now they're just stuck. And it's such a horrible place to be. And I've worked with so many patients that have really had to climb over the thought that they're more than their pain, and sometimes pushing through the pain to get to where they need to get to is really what they need to start thinking about. But when it comes to laughter or just joyfulness in certain activities is so therapeutic, because one, it gets their mind away from thinking about the pain. They might still have it, but they're focused on something else, which is then a great way to even reduce some of the pain that they're having. And we know that laughter releases endorphins, which then has a positive effect on pain too. But the first thing that I would mention to patients is I ask them, what are you doing to have fun or get joy out of your life? And most of them say nothing because I'm in so much pain. And so then I say, that's the first thing you need to focus on. Aside from working with us, aside from, you need to start doing things that make you happy. And they look at me like, what is this place? Am I doing exercise therapy, chiropractic, or is this a therapist? And I, by no means saying that I am a therapist. And many times when I'm working with chronic pain patients, I do refer out for mental health therapy because it is such a huge synergistic effect. And we've talked about that on one podcast. I know we talked a lot about that.
Love it.
So that is the first thing I say to patients. I say, are you doing things that make you happy or joyful? And if you're not, you need to start adding that in right away, because it's the getting your mind off of the pain, choosing to get ahead and taking control of your life and not letting the pain direct your thoughts and actions. And then again, when you are doing those things, most likely you're smiling, you're having laughter, and that then increases endorphins, all the other enkephalin production, and then pain usually is reduced anyway. Super helpful for managing pain.
Absolutely. And I've seen studies that anytime you smile, it diminishes the pain threshold. So
For sure.
you add on laughter, which is even more of an emotional, happy state. It only benefits even more from there. And I've seen this even in the interactions when you're in the clinic with certain people, that you just joke around, they laugh, they smile. And then I actually, since you brought that up in the last or the previous podcast before, I started noticing the correlation when I see them for the adjustment compared to what they said when they first came in. They said they don't have any pain anymore, which it works that quickly. Obviously, there's a time process to the tissue healing and the whole over body healing itself, but we're seeing on a day-to-day basis, let alone if you can start implementing this into your everyday life, not in a medical setting.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the benefits it would have not only for you, but also your family, kids, parents, grandparents?
Yep.
Like, huge importance.
And life is, for a lot of people, is so serious. Because we all have issues that we're going through in life. No matter what, the longer you're on this earth, the more problems you're going to have. That's just the law. That's just how it happens. So you're always going to have to deal with something, whether that's change in financial situation, whether that's change in family situation, divorce, death, unfortunately, just all the things that unfortunately come with being on this earth longer than year after year. So you need to just always assume and prepare that the longer you're on this earth, the more things you're going to be dealing with. And how do we just make this worth the distance that we're going to go is scheduling these things in your life so that one day you don't look back and say, man, I really wish I would have did more things that were joyful, and I didn't work as hard, and it wasn't so serious. And I'm sure you've seen the studies done too. They go and they ask in the nursing homes, what do they regret most? And every single one of them said, I wish I would have done more things with my families. I wish I would have had more fun. I wish I wouldn't have been so serious about finding, like, it's all the same. It's all the same. And so this is what it comes back to. So the first study that I have here is titled, Is Laughter the Best Medicine? Question mark. It's a cross-sectional study of cardiovascular disease among older Japanese adults. So the design was really cool, actually. They basically, at one point in time, collected a large amount of data from older Japanese adults, and it was specific to these adults living in a community versus institution, and both men and women were included. So they collected the frequency of laughter, meaning they had to report how often they laughed on a daily basis. It was categorized into daily, weekly, or rarely. And then, of course, the self-report provided insight into the regularity of emotion and expression in their patients' lives. They then also looked at cardiovascular disease assessment, and I believe they looked at risk of stroke. And I think there was one more. I thought they looked at cancer, but that might have been a different study. What they found was the study revealed that participants who reported frequent laughter on a daily basis had a lower prevalence of heart disease compared to those who rarely laughed. Also, participants who laughed more often had a lower risk of stroke, suggesting that laughter may have protective effects against different types of cardiovascular events. The study also explored gender-based differences, meaning both men and women benefited from frequent laughter. However, with older men showing somewhat stronger correlations with reduced heart disease risks, which, again, I'm not sure the correlation there, but just cool to see that not only does it have an effect maybe on pain or short term, but even in the long term. Enjoying life, beneficial, long term, absolutely has long term mortality effects.
And even with some of this too, if you guys have ever laughed so hard that your stomach, your abs hurt so much, I mean, there's a physical component,
For
let
sure.
alone blood flow, but even not even considering the mental component top down.
Yeah.
Like there's so many probably different circuits in play when laughter is occurring. I don't know as much in depth on that side of things, but I know the positive effects, even from some of these studies, huge importance. Whether it's, even if you're not laughing, just try to smile.
Yeah.
So either or would be good.
And it helps build optimism, trying to have a more positive effect on your life. And if you guys haven't looked into what are called ANTs, automatic negative thoughts, which is, I've seen this in so many podcasts and discussions and providers talking about this.
What is
but
this again, you said?
automatic negative thoughts, meaning
Okay.
a negative thought comes in, you allow that thought to exist, and you then take the energy of the negative thought on. You then tend to then think about the worry and effect of what that negativity looks like if it were to play out. You start to worry, you start to catastrophize, meaning you take that thought to its furthest extent and you choose to live it before it actually happens. And then you ruminate, meaning you think about it again and again. So example would be, all right, you have a test coming up. And then you're thinking, gosh, what if I fail? And you're like, okay, then if I fail, then I'm gonna have to retake it. Then I'm gonna have to take that class again. And then I gotta work hard again. And I just wasted all that time. And then I'm gonna have to spend money on it. Like, that's just one example. Versus, all right, I have time to prepare, study as best as I can. The outcome, if I work hard, I know I should pass. But if I don't, I'll worry about that later. And then you don't let that thought dictate the negative energy in moving it forward. Another outcome would be, gosh, I don't know, there's so many that you can think of, but having, let's say, a health issue. It's saying, for this instance, would be, I have this shoulder pain that I've had for how long? It's not getting better. Gosh, if it gets worse, I may not be able to do the things that I love. I may have to have surgery, then it changes my life. But we know, as providers, we have so much time before things like that may happen. So come in, get assessed, stop worrying, put your faith into those who know what they're doing, let them help you, and know that if you work at it, we've always found, no matter what, if you are working on yourself daily and we give you the tools to do that, you will find outcomes.
Oh, yes.
You will find benefits. You are not too far along. Even if it's truly awful, we've seen some crazy conditions and we've still gained benefits late in life in the elderly. So that's where not letting those thoughts overtake your life, choosing to stay positive, doing the things that make you laugh, having joy in life is only going to give you benefit moving forward.
And then going back to that point when you're saying like just ruminating that negative experience, like I'm sure a lot of people with anxiety
Oh yeah.
start to just, I'm sure it's hard for them to control it. And there's certain people in my life that have similar attributes, and different ways that you can go about it is change the setting, go out, do a different activity, just get out of that physical state, which subsequently will help the emotional state as
Yes.
well. So that would be a really good place. But Doc, what have you found in terms of the effects of laughter therapy with anxiety?
Absolutely. And this was a really great study titled The Effect of Laughter Therapy on Anxiety, and it was a meta-analysis done. Meta-analysis is just a method of synthesizing multiple sources of information into kind of a pool, and then they take the best of the best and then just report on that. So they vet the strongest information from that. So Out of all the information that they gathered, they chose to then take 4 randomized controlled trials, which are really high quality studies, and it consisted of then in total 157 in these 4 studies, 157 people, and it tried to then show laughter therapy sessions and their anxiety levels compared to control, who didn't receive any therapy. The analysis, they used certain statistical, I think, questionnaires, and just, I think they used studies, or not studies, questionnaires that just reported on certain cognitive health effects that they were having, whether they were extremely stressed or not. And then, of course, they were able to show a change after the sessions were done. The pooled results showed statistically significant decrease in anxiety among participants who underwent laugh therapy compared to placebo, or compared to the control group. What it showed was laughter therapy consistently reduced anxiety across the studies in the included in the analysis. And then I wanted to just report on one thing here. This study supports the idea that laughter therapy can be used as a mental health intervention, and especially for individuals experiencing anxiety. It also is helpful, complementary to do what's called cognitive behavioral therapy alongside of laughter therapy, which is more a mindfulness therapy, just telling yourself that things are going to be okay. It's more of a guided meditation, just again, helps to push positive thought and not think so negatively about the condition that you have. And we've talked about CBT on other things like low back pain, and not even just mental issues, but just physical pain you're having. Meaning, in the end, that public health implication should be that these kinds of things should be first line compared to medication and other things like that. But yeah, this was very specific, meaning this specific laughter therapy about anxiety. But I would almost bet that just doing things that push you to be happier, have more of a community setting, joyfulness, laughter, all will then add to the reduction of anxiety anyway, not just doing specific laughter therapy.
That makes a lot of sense. And I started noticing some of this in my everyday life. Like, naturally, I'm just a joyful person. Anytime I'm stressed for longer periods of time, just getting away from that situation. But now we started watching The Office,
Oh yeah,
that series again, which is fun. Peacock, there's some really stupid things that they do that I find funny, but I noticed don't have the low level like anxiety of these things need to get done on this date or anything else like that. And wife and I started watching that, and I started noticing some of her symptoms as well, much the same as mine, start diminishing
for
as well.
sure.
So it's funny when you look at on how different things can impact your whole mental mind state. But going back to the laughter, joy, fun, play, it all adds up.
It does. And that's
cool.
funny that you had that experience, because I had a similar experience. My partner and I, when we were watching a very serious Lord of the Rings TV show,
Yeah.
again, there's a lot of variables at play, but we recently went through a move, which again, moves can be very stressful. But during the week, we were watching Marvel movies. We were watching in chronological order. We're trying to get to from start to finish for when the new Avengers are coming out.
Hey.
And we got to the Guardians of the Galaxy, and we were just laughing all week. And it's been lighter for us. And I think that's really helped us during this stressful time. And I just noticed that our back and forth is a lot different. We're not so serious. We're more light. We've been laughing all week at these movies towards the end of the day. A great way to just de-stress. And I too have noticed that tremendously when I've added laughter in different parts of my day.
Oh, I love that.
Yep.
That's awesome. So, Doc, it's funny that you brought some of that up, and obviously shows on TV or movies on TV are a little different than outside playing, but still with this psychological component in adulthood, it makes a lot of sense in terms of how we can get out of like our head, out of our mind. But I know you brought up a different study, and I think this is actually a perfect time to introduce it. The influence of play psychologically for adults, and what has it shown for that study, and I guess what do those results look like?
Absolutely. This is a study done in 2022. Influence of play on positive psychological development in emerging adulthood. So this was a very interesting study, and I'll try to break it down so that you guys can understand how the study was designed. But it focused on emerging adults, meaning in between 18 to 25-year-olds, and it explored how play, when added into their lives, compared to, you know, those who weren't doing those kinds of things, influenced emotional and psychological growth during, obviously, this kind of developmental phase in life. So the play in this study was very broadly defined because, again, play could mean so many different things, obviously,
Yep.
like what we talked about, but it included physical and recreational activities. So
Perfect.
it could include working out, but it also could include hanging out with your friends. So very broad. It wasn't very specific, but just in general, we'll use play as just a broad term for doing the things that we talked about previously. And that was then seen as how did that promote enjoyment and engagement, and then what did that actually improve as far as emotional intelligence, stress resilience, psychological benefits, all of these things that they collected. And they validated this with certain questionnaires as far as before and after. So the key outcomes of this study showed that time spent in play was significantly associated with higher emotional intelligence. Those who engaged more frequently in play-related activities exhibited greater emotional awareness, emotional regulation, and empathy. And I know we talked about emotional intelligence, EQ, in the workplace because we talked about that with Gary Vee.
That's right.
And so, Doc, very quickly, just want to touch on what EQ is and why that's so important.
Yeah, emotional intelligence is your ability to regulate not only your emotions, but also to read other people's emotions in different settings. And so you can address and adapt the environment, reaction, relationship with that individual or setting. So, more or less, the better you are at paying attention not only to your emotions, but other people's for the greater good of whatever you're doing, will have a better outcome long term. So, it actually makes sense because I know we were asking this question, it's funny enough, on like how this even got brought about, but this psych shows it right there. And if you're paying attention to or having fun with an individual, you're going to notice a higher emotional fun state, either with that person or that person in that setting. Maybe that's them playing a sport that they love versus emotional intelligence of someone that is depressed, anxious, that so it's almost like a spectrum. And how can you re-regulate that homeostatic frequency throughout your
Yeah.
life? And putting yourself in that person's shoes in that specific time with you not knowing what's going on in their life can give you a good understanding. Can you help them almost re-regulate their system to a certain extent?
Absolutely. And it makes sense in a very simplified manner of how can you be better at understanding people while being around people.
Yes.
I
Yeah, that's
get
good.
why, obviously, it's helpful, but it's just nice to
Yeah.
see objective data showing that.
Yes.
EQ was a key predictor of positive emotional traits such as higher emotional stability and optimism, which is obviously essential for maintaining psychological well-being and navigating challenges in emerging adulthood. Lastly, participants with more positive emotional traits were found to have greater resilience. So the way that this was laid out, this study was called a serial mediation method study, I think is how it was shown. Yeah, serial mediation model. And very briefly what that meant was they used certain variables to try to tie into other variables to try to see what caused what to get what outcome. It's a very difficult study. So what they found in this kind of outcome was that, okay, time spent in play was significantly associated with higher EQ. Higher EQ was a key predictor of positive emotional traits, and positive emotional traits then found those who had better positive emotional traits had better stress resilience. What caused what? All of those obviously tie into each other, but you're going to find that they all have a circle of correlation together. And so again, with greater stress resilience, have better emotional control, more positive emotional outlook, better equipped to handle stress and adversity.
Love that. So when you were even bringing that up, going back to that homeostatic flow of like how your mental mindset can be, if you don't have like those highs of those joyful, fun states, but you're having more low emotional states, and it's harder for you to almost re-regulate your system back up. So it diminishes the threshold to where you can get to that fun, happy place as much. So you're going to almost have to force yourself into those fun environments or new settings or something like that to
Yep.
almost re-regulate that frame in terms of how you can re-regulate yourself in a happy state versus a sad, depressed, anxious state.
Yep.
So that's interesting.
And
Pushing threshold.
I think this is a good time to tie in one of my thoughts for this podcast I wanted to bring up, and that's because I wanted to touch on the threshold idea that you just brought up, which is what kind of activities or actions will allow us to reach that certain level of dopamine rewarding pursuit.
Yes.
And of course, increase in serotonin and all the other brain chemicals that allow us to feel fulfillment, joy, pursuit, all those things. But what we don't realize is social media, digital technology is a very cheap and quick way to receive that. But we don't understand that we are stealing threshold to do that because it's so easy for us to go on our phone and receive that versus going and scheduling events and times with other people, then going and doing that. Yes, it's a lot more time involved to get to that event and hang out with people, and it takes time and effort. But what you don't realize is doing that is so much more healthy, beneficial, short and long term, than getting that quick, cheap dopamine from your phone. And oftentimes or not, it then becomes harder to reach that dopamine reward with other activities in life. And I know this is not quite the same comparison in this setting, but they've looked at that with like pornography and then sexual encounters with other people after that. So obviously, if it's quick, it's cheap, it's easy to get, but then of course you go and actually try to do that with another person, and it's just not as fulfilling or rewarding because your brain very quickly got what it wanted and there was no extra effort. And now you're finding it even harder to have that interaction with another person. And you can use that kind of thought process with other things in regards to that dopamine pathway. And that's what I think we're losing in that battle right now with technology, kids especially.
Oh, God.
And I know we might get to the kid part here in a little bit, but yeah, Doc, anything you want to touch on there?
So I really like what you brought up. The thing that was going through my mind, especially when people find themselves scrolling on social media, maybe they come across either a project they like or a sport or event that's coming up, and they say, okay, I like it. Maybe I'll save this, revisit later. It's that small time frame from when they see it, they find it, okay, that's cool, I want to do that, that's enjoyable. It's that time from when they see that to when they save it or when they see it before they scroll to the next thing. You almost have to stop it. So pause the video, get out of the app, and then write whatever that is down in a different location. So it's almost like to change your state, you have to change almost the setting in which you're in. Okay, yes, it's still on your phone, but get out of that app, put it in your notes tab. I want to do this, or put it in your calendar. I want to do this, or go and actually look that event up and then put it in to your schedule, or just create action afterwards for that small little connection. So instead of, oh, that's awesome, I might do that later, swipe. It's that small time frame.
I love that. So for me, when I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking, okay, for those of you, I'm sure out there, similar to myself, you love to watch food creation videos on Instagram, where I love to just save those recipes for later. But what do? I never actually use them. But for that, I'd said, okay, find that recipe, pick a part of the week that you're going to actually go to the grocery store, actually go and get those ingredients, and then cook it.
Beautiful.
There is then, is there something that you would maybe have an example to then?
Oh, God.
To put you on the spot, sorry.
No, that kind of almost goes back to how I went back to the hockey rink after years. I saw a bunch of like hockey videos, skating a rink, public skate. I don't even remember what video it was, but I just remember, oh, that'd be cool. We have one here. Why not check open skate out?
Yeah.
And then talk to my wife about it. Yeah, we should do that. So we created change. It wasn't in that split second, but it sparks a new interest and something new.
Heck yeah.
But
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that you brought that up.
Cool.
That's so cool.
Doc, going back to some of the stories that you may have, or maybe anecdotes for people listening to help deal with stress or cope, just to raise that threshold a little bit. What are some of the things that you have?
Aside from working out, hiking, all the things, there is actually one more thing that I have found to immensely help manage my stress, and that is cold plunging.
Oh, yes.
I'm serious. Game changer. When I was doing that regularly, which I'm going to get back to now that I just moved, my goodness, my ability to handle stress multiplied by 5 to 10, I feel, as far as what I could objectively observe. Just my ability to stay more poised during stressful situations. Stress also didn't impact me too intensely comparative to before I was doing it. And I think the way that I would break it down is, and we're still understanding the research. I know I think we did a pod on cold plunging. Huberman's done so much on that if you guys want to look into his work. But when you put yourself into such a crazy neurological nervous system change as cold plunging does, other than stressful events, just aren't as crazy impactful to your nervous system. And I didn't explain that maybe as best as I wanted to, but what it does is it prepares you for such a drastic nervous system change since you've already put yourself into that kind of state. And then once you're there, having to actually sit through it, breathe through it, almost push through that pain, that discomfort. And then when you're out, it's rewarding. You've gotten through it, you've pursued, you've achieved. And then, of course, when actual stress comes into your life, you've been then preparing since you've been doing these kinds of activities. So that has been super helpful. There's also other positive health effects with cold plunging. It's great. I'd recommend it. Doc, how about for yourself?
No, that's the mental image in my mind when you brought that up. It's raising that threshold, not as much to the enjoyable play state, but it still can bring it up to where it almost brings that bottom depressed, anxious state up to more baseline, if you will, to diminish that bottom threshold versus the top, which will then allow you more freedom to increase it. So like anything awesome, fun in life, usually you have to go to the tough things first. And I'm really glad you brought that up, cold plunge, because it's brilliant actually. So I guess for me, other than some of the stuff we touched on, just getting out, change the setting, get out of that stressful, anxious, depressed state, whether it's an individual that is causing it, getting out of that conversation, out of that momentary state, significantly will help with the stressful state so you can re-regulate that specific time frame. But long term, if that trend continues on either with that person, that place, that workplace, that would be something that you might want to start looking at, either change and how to go about that change. If you don't know where to go, a mental therapist, a coworker that is more positive in manner usually have a better recommendations more times than not.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's 2 cents on that one.
Yeah, and finding communities can be tough in the beginning, but if you keep trying, eventually you will find a community. There's so many other people looking for their community too. So don't just think it's just you as well.
Love it. Now, Doc, I was actually really excited to bring up this creativity and play. And creativity is something that I know we touched on this previously before, and we'll go back to like kids and how lack of creativity that they have is then going to lead to problems down the road that we're going to have to prepare for. But the connection between creativity and how you can get into these different mental states naturally will come with you being probably more in either a flow state or just a critical thinking state, to where if a problem comes in, whether it's you yourself or a problem that you're working on work-wise, to how you can almost look outside the box to that problem or challenge can definitely help, not only neural circuit wise, but also bring about this type of state that is almost new, which can then help into the dopamine system a little bit more. But yeah, creativity, if you don't find yourself there, I would strongly suggest to try find that state or try different activities that can help. And we'll get into those here in a sec. But Doc, I'm very curious on your thought process with kids, creativity, and where that's going to lead to problems down the road.
For sure. So I'm going to take this in 2 parts. Before I get to the kid part, I'm going to just touch on why creativity is helpful for a certain subject. I'm going to use myself as an example so that I understand where I'm getting at, but I tend to be much more analytical in nature. very rational. I'm a thinker, numbers, type A, not a lot of creativity. Maybe I'm not very artsy. So I tend to have that portion of my thought process throughout the day as a primary driver of action and thought. But that means I'm only really stimulating one hemisphere of my brain. Because what people don't realize is you have your analytical and then you have your creative brain. And those are two separate parts. And whether you or not agree or believe this, you need to stimulate both. And play is the creative too. And creativity, imagination drives so much healthy development in the brain too. For me, I never really had a creative outlet until we had the pod, actually.
Yeah.
And I even before, I can't even think of a time I was too creative. And I just have noticed how much happier and healthier I've been having this creative outlet because I've been able to use creativity to manage the brand, colors, breaking down the shorts, clipping videos, and just trying to think about the better ways to move the pod forward in terms of designing and creativity. And that actually, I enjoy that. I really do. And I never had that before. And so for me, having that outlet now, among the other things that I do, has definitely helped me in terms of my mental well-being. So for someone who is so highly analytical, brain numbers, that kind of thing, having that now has really helped keep me overall health in general in terms of brain and cognition. So
I love it.
I just wanted to touch on that. But the second thing you talked about again was creativity, imagination in children. And so I'm going to take a page from Dr. Connor Bohr, which I might be able to try to find the video you guys can look at. But shout out to Doc. He's a chiropractor neurologist who treats mostly, if not only, kids. And he was talking about how you should absolutely not allow your children to have iPads. And it was his thought process, and I thought it was so beautiful. He goes, kids should be allowed to be bored because boredom is what allows them to start being creative and using their imaginations to keep themselves stimulated. And if you starve that from them, if you take that from them with the iPad, it then desensitizes their ability to be bored. And when they are then bored, they're much more temperamental, maybe they're fidgety, and they're just trying to stimulate themselves, but they've never been able to because they've always had the iPad, which then it's that stealing that cheap dopamine again. And it's like all they know is the iPad. And for those of you who maybe are Doc and I's age, who we had digital, but maybe it was like age 16 or 17, and so we didn't really have that when we were younger, you'll notice that maybe your kids are having a tougher time just sitting in a chair and just being by themselves. And this is where I think we're getting to that struggle right now, which is, can kids just stimulate themselves without the need of digital? And too many times I think the iPad is a parent. And I don't have kids, so this is my naive approach and hypothesis. But I think those of you out there who have done a lot of work not allowing your kids to have screen time and doing your best, I think you guys understand this compared to those who don't. I think it's very important if you're a parent. Doc?
Yeah, and anytime we often see it like when kids come into the clinic, the parents want them to be cordial to society. I think is probably the best way to say it. And I think having that understanding of either as a parent standpoint, again, I don't have kids either, so similar boat, but in terms of observation from a clinical experience standpoint, with the kids having the iPad, much like Doc said, it keeps them quiet, it keeps them cordial to society. However, I think we almost need to push that barrier way more.
Yes.
I think as a parent coming in saying, my kid usually might be a little bit outspoken, I apologize in advance, just to set that precedent from that environment. Those that are receiving, or for them in interaction with them and that family, that parent, the kid, being open and willing to be like, okay, they're still learning, developing. The kids are being kids.
Yes.
I think, and being okay with that. It's so important. I think that'll help society moving forward. But and not getting stressed over the small things like a couple water spills and maybe goes on a carpet or what have you with that. It's being okay with certain small things that, yes, these kids are learning, developing, but I think going back to your point and having that conversation with that individual that the kid, the parent, and saying that it's okay, I think is also is so important for society moving forward. Being open, willingness, maybe starting off small, and maybe a one-on-one play date interaction without the iPads, and just having the kids try to either play with themselves, maybe not even like I probably would test this out myself, but more or less go into an open room, maybe providing them a couple small things and just having them do their own things.
For sure.
Just see how they interact, just to help with that social connection of them as they would grow and project to grow, so they can go out into everyday life, to have those conversations, to not have anxiety, to talk to someone, to go into a store and feel like everyone's looking at them.
Yeah.
There's just so much anxiety, depressive states that can come from these situations. So I'm really glad that you brought that up.
Absolutely.
Creativity wise. But yeah, Doc, there's one thing that I know in terms of how to get into the creative state. I know I have a couple different ways that I can go about it. I don't know if you have specific ones. So I can talk on mine first.
Yeah, you go ahead and I'll see if I can add anything.
Yeah. So anytime, and it's hard for me to talk about this because sometimes it just comes naturally to me. I just almost get into a flow state. But for me, when I work on patients and some of their cases, like I almost put myself in their physical state and to a certain extent their symptoms as well. And then try to almost rehab myself if I was in that individual. I started noticing myself work on and noticing different perceptions of what they might go at, thus that emotional intelligence aspect, to where I'm able to almost find myself going into either different therapies, whether it's physical and or emotional state. So I guess that's just one thing myself. So I put myself in another person's shoes and I look at how they perceive life, walk, move around, which gives me a good understanding of, is there certain things that maybe I can take from that myself? There's a small thing there, but I have to get up and move. The other area and how it can stimulate that mind creativity and how a bunch of different scopes of practice can get funneled into different parts. More or less what I mean by that is if I'm thinking about, say, cold plunges, can cold plunges help for a person with anxiety? Can they help with someone that has a certain condition? And looking at it from connecting the dots, but having a general understanding of a bunch of other factors involved with these two connections can connect a bunch of different dots and open up doors of different possibilities that can come from it. Until you experience, and this is from my standpoint, I'm sure others have a different way about it, but almost just thinking about it from different perspectives helps significantly. The other way that helps me get into that creative mindset is by going through walks, having my mind go blank, just either staying off in the space, looking at a distal point or a point so far down the road that's such a small spot, and then quickly trying to open my eyes up and look at the biggest area around me and going back and forth between those two, subconsciously trying to, or consciously trying to get out of going back and forth, and my mind or my body just naturally does that. And then start thinking about different topics, different perspectives comes to mind, and I'm able to connect different dots much easier. So those would be two ways that physically, mentally, I'm able to get into those creative states.
Yeah.
But
And for me, I think using my example of getting into a creative outlet is more of the how to manage the YouTube shorts and all the other creations off of the pod. So that's how I get into the creative, is I put myself into that, kind of as if you were like, okay, I want to do more crafts or paint pictures or that. So you know you're putting yourself into that state. So you're already, and then just knowing that, I think the biggest thing I want to leave you guys with is knowing that, because for me, when I first started this, when we first started this, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything. And I was okay with, no. If you go back to our first shorts we've ever posted to now, and even our podcast, you'll see this progression over time. And it's a progression of knowing that I definitely didn't know what I was doing in the beginning. The quality was probably far less than what it is, now. And I'm not still saying it's perfect. I'm learning every day, but knowing that you're going to put yourself into something new and you're probably not going to be good at it, but just enjoying that process and just trying to do your best and getting to the end and knowing that it may not be perfect, but every time you do it, you're going to get a little bit better. And please don't have this idea that even after a few times, you're going to be perfect. It might take half a year. It might take a year. Who knows? But it's just that willingness to put yourself into that creative state and have fun with it. By no means don't be tough on yourself, and just allow it to flow, and just take the joy from doing something new, fun, and don't be so tough on yourself.
I love that.
Yep.
Now that makes a lot of sense, and I think a lot of people can benefit from both of those significantly quite well. So, Doc, going back to how the kids are not getting bored enough in society, which I think definitely needs to get re-regulated, but in terms of the social aspect of play, I know you brought up a study. I'm actually really curious on what you found with that. So what have you found in terms of the social connections?
For sure. So this was a study called Association of Leisure Time Physical Activity Types on all-cause risk mortality, cardiovascular mortality, and cancer mortality in older adults. Just meaning if you chose to take time in your schedule to do leisure activities that were more physically based, what that outcome looked like as far as long term. And it showed a mixture of different physical activities such as aerobic exercises in classes. It was muscle strengthening activities, combinations. And what it showed was the outcomes on all-cause mortality, meaning did it lengthen your life? Cardiovascular mortality, meaning the effects of health on your heart and your ability to lower your lifespan. And then, of course, on cancer mortality, meaning how did it affect you lowering your life as far as in specificity to cancer. So what it showed was using hours per week, it then compared that to certain ranges in hours in adults, and then it categorized it into groups, like what the walking group did, what the running group did, swimming, gardening, anything that had to do with physical activity. And the study recorded at the end of life mortality, meaning all cause, mortality from heart, mortality from cancer. And of course, then they broke it apart into age, sex, pre-existing conditions, everything that they could. What the outcomes were: higher levels of physical activity was associated with lowering all-cause mortality rates. Those who engaged in any form of physical activity had overall reduced mortality risk compared to those who with little or no activity. Things like aerobic exercises and muscle strengthening activities were both linked to significant reductions in mortalities. And not only that, there was a substantial decrease in cardiovascular mortality, and there was a modest reduction in cancer-related deaths, meaning there was a somewhat protective effect on those who not only had cancer, but lengthened their life if they did. Why that's helpful is because it just shows that if you choose to put this into your life, it's actually going to lengthen your life when you choose to make this a priority. Not all forms of physical activity had the same health benefits. Aerobic exercises had a particularly stronger association with cardiovascular mortality, where muscle strengthening activities contributed to more overall mortality reduction. So obviously, heart health, if you're running, having more aerobic is going to be a better outcome. But there was also a dose-response relationship, meaning greater amounts of activity obviously led to better outcomes, which was about even moderate levels of 7.5 hours a week was still beneficial. So that's once a day for an hour, which it doesn't even have to be running for an hour. It could be gardening for an hour. It's just some type of physical activity, moderate activity, still showed positive outcomes in these patients. So
Wow, cool.
what this really came down to was just knowing that any type of physical activity, even for just an hour a day, still had tremendous health benefits on all-cause mortality, heart mortality, and cancer mortality.
That's cool. They say obviously physical exercise is important, but even just the mental component, cardiovascular wise and cancer risk,
Yep.
that's important. That kind of almost shifts thinking in terms of what we're actually shooting for, not only patients, but families, ourselves.
Yes.
You almost have to put your joy and fun, laughter probably at the forefront. And then you add in some activity with that physical activity, kill two birds with one stone. There you go.
Yes. And
That's good.
I think a lot of people nowadays, put that part of their life on the back
Oh, for
burner
sure.
in exchange for productivity, finances, and drive towards pursuit of things, house, car,
Family,
and just obtaining those things,
Mhm.
and choosing not to work out, choosing not to hang out with people because they're so busy. We need to switch that
Sure.
narrative.
Oh man, that's lovely. Okay, so I guess let's add into the equation group activities, team building, sports, just even the community aspect, because I think this kind of almost brings everything back to center. To do some of these activities, to have fun and to enjoy, not only from maybe on a workplace, but even from a family standpoint. So if one of your family members finds, let's say, gardening or art, drawing beneficial, I suggest you as a family do a group thing, even going back to team building, because I know that some of the stuff that we've done here in the clinic, every few months, 4 6 months or so, we go out and do some activity as a team, and
Yeah.
we try to switch it up depending on what people like, and then we have a vote. We can't do the same thing twice. Just to try new different things together as a team will also help improve the play aspect, but also then subsequently then helps results and just brings us together more
Yeah,
so.
chemistry wise, for sure. And a touch of what I do with that is I do like to work out every day, but every once in a while on Saturday, a good friend of mine and we go to the same gym and we work out together. That community thing, I get to see my friends. There's that camaraderie. We go have lunch together, and just another way to add to an already existing habit of mine, but then
Yeah.
also getting to have that community thing. Same as if I was going to go hike, adding some friends, an invitation, seeing who wants to go, creating a community, already doing things that you're already doing, but just having that community portion to it as well.
I love it. That's awesome. All right, Doc. Well, shoot, let's get into a couple of questions to ask. We can either go through these more in depth or be more of like a quick shoot and fire kind of deal. So I guess let's start with this one. What does play mean to you as an adult, and how has your understanding of it changed over time?
Yeah. So I think play as a kid for certain reasons, but play as a kid is exploration.
Ooh,
You're exploring. And it's not to say that you aren't doing that when you're an adult too, but you really are trying to explore any and all parts of boundaries in life. And so you really need to, and I think the way that I understand it came from Dr. Jordan Peterson. He said, kids should, for self-esteem, confidence, they should be able to explore in an environment that's safe, but still has some cautiousness to it. And as an adult parent, you should be able to look upon them without intervening, let them struggle a little bit and not help them right away, but allow them to struggle through it. And you don't need to hover over their exploration. So a good example would be like, all right, let's say they're trying to climb up on a coffee table. And okay, yes, you know that if they fall, it's not going to be good, but allow them to struggle a little bit. Let them be an explorer and let them climb up onto a little bit. Let them stand, let them walk. If they're, let's say they're going to try to get over to the couch, you can scoot the table a little closer to the couch, but don't say, hey, don't, and this might vary between parents. Some just are a little more cautious, and this by no means is a direct recommendation, but this is just how I think through things, and allowing your kids to have that ability to explore and have that confidence this is the first times that they're going to struggle through things, and let them have that. So just pull it a little closer, then let them jump onto the couch. They then succeeded. Say, hey, that was so fun, cool. Those are just little, I guess, recommendations that I would think about as you allow your kids to explore and play. Now, in adulthood, it might be trying something new, but allowing yourself to, and it may not be so tough on yourself when you fail, since obviously you don't have a parent telling you that. It's now yourself. You're having to tell yourself that, hey, I'm gonna go and try hike a mountain, and I might be winded by the first 10 minutes, but take a break, sit down, if you feel like you still can't get all the way up, perfect. Turn around, go back down and say, hey, I still got outside. I did a great job. It was fun. I got to see nature. And maybe that's how I would have it be a difference of thought process over time,
Wow.
kid from adult.
Yeah, I don't even know if I could say that any better. I know we have I think a nephew name's Brooks. He was playing around last night, jumping on or almost on the coffee table, walking around the pool, and everyone's just always cautious. The parents, awesome. They're just sitting back watching. I think it's probably a mixture of either they know what his tendencies are, and then also to have some of the other adults take charge of looking after him maybe a little bit more. But
Yep.
I found myself just trying to make sure he doesn't either fall in the pool or fall off a coffee table or what have you with that. And just some of those interesting things as we're talking through this, I can start seeing the reasons why and how exploration is so needed. But I think that also comes with the times or the mental acuity of how certain time spans work in younger folk in terms of why everything's so messy, because they spend so much time or a small amount of time, excuse me, on maybe this task, and then they get bored because something else stimulates them, and
Yeah.
they go try to figure out this other thing, and they just explore and just try to navigate the earth and try to get as much different stimuli into their system as possible so they can continue learning, because kids they learn and adapt so quickly and on a consistent basis, which kind of makes sense on why we want to give them the freedom and why we want to make sure that they're bored so they can start thinking outside the box. But
And
yeah, it's
the
fun.
last thing I was going to add is let them fail.
Yeah.
Let them fail.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, if their first big failure in life comes when they're 16, man, they're going to have a big world to adapt to. If they have been hovered over their whole life and things have been done for them and they weren't allowed to fail and struggle through that earlier on in life.
Oh, absolutely.
Doc, this one, I'm excited to hear from you, but in what ways, you touched on it a little bit, but what ways do you think play can improve workplace dynamics and productivity?
Oh, God. Hugely important. I think first off, you have to give the freedom and also probably a little bit of a guideline that where they can enjoy, play, be creative type of frame. So I know for us, and it's probably a little different medical setting versus anywhere else. Certain jobs might be a little different, but for us, in terms of how we can rehab individuals, and there's a bunch of different things that can be worked on for person to person. So it's allowing the staff to have a general understanding of what this person has, and then different ways on how we can go about either helping them heal themselves or treat certain conditions. So, for example, that might be they have a knee problem, pain with the lower back, maybe headaches here and there, or pick a just even one of those itself. Obviously, they have a general understanding of certain rehab that we want them to do, but then having the staff have them try different challenges in
Yep.
the office, have them try different therapies, try to explore and having the staff learn different ways on how they can help other people, and then being comfortable as a leader and then giving them the space to try different things,
For
I think
sure.
is important. If there's certain things, if they push it too much, to know the barrier and then have proper communication to the team if certain things come up is obviously important. But I know what we do in the office, we have challenges on a weekly or every 2 week basis, which encourages patients to try different things, to push different parts of healing for their system. So for this example, this week or this last week, just reading off the board, how long can you hold weighted shoulder abduction, or how long can you hold your weight when your arms are beside you against gravity? And actually, Doc beat us. Yeah, he set the record.
Yeah.
3 minutes and 14 seconds with 5 pound weight, which is, it's way more challenging than you guys think. And that's then focusing on then type 1 muscle fibers of the shoulder, which perfect for Doc and everywhere else. So are there certain things that you can challenge the people that you work with, still also moving in the same direction for the healing state or the greater
And
good? But
it hits a lot of other parts too, because it provides a level of joy and there's laughter with it, because it's like who's going to beat who, and
yeah,
but there's still
competition.
this level of, hey, you did such a great job, you didn't win, but hey, this was still a good number.
Yes.
And there's a part of therapy that it's starting to become more prevalent called gamification.
Ooh.
And that is, I think, something that's going to be included in the future, using maybe VR as well, but creating games that are more stimulating in therapy than just your typical, and I'm simplifying it, but let's say just a regular band work, curl, those kinds of things. But how can you also continue to keep your patient engaged? And it's different here because the setting that we create is much more engaging, but even in a setting where and maybe it's not. And so how can you then keep your patient more engaged? Instead of just having the exercise, create a game for them to stay engaged with during the exercise. A common one would be if it's an elderly patient who has a tough time moving their arms. Maybe you could take cups and have them stack them all up as quick as they can and then unstack them. And that's a great way for some range of motion. It also does a little bit of aerobic exercise. And there are a lot of videos that you can find on gamification or what to include in as far as if you're interested in that. But that alone has been, I think, a great way to also increase engagement in your patients. And I think also with the VR goggles and those kinds of technology that's coming down the road, you can have them put the goggles on and then maybe put them in this setting and have them explore with a different reality. That's going to be pretty cool coming down the road too. But just again, how do we get patients to show up, have them have fun, keep them engaged, but also staying productive and having an outcome and end result?
That's a good point. And when you were going over that, I got another one too. When I was in undergrad, I was starting to become a teacher, and then turned to physical education teacher, and then turned to exercise science. When I was looking to go more for a PE teacher, and how they frame the structure of what physical activity they need to do either for that week or for that day, it was interesting to see like the critical thinking. It's different games to play to target different parts or attributes of that person or that group of people. So then it's like different types of activities and how well you can blend and keep them engaged for that hour at a time, but have it move smoothly. And that definitely opened up my mind for a bunch of different types of games. This was more for like elementary, middle school, so it changed a little bit as they got older. It turned into more of a sport than as physical fitness. But looking from a parent's standpoint, if there's certain topics or attributes you want to improve of that child, are there different types of games that you can implement into their everyday process, or new games added in here and there that you can think of that can either help with either mental acuity, rational thinking, hand-eye coordination? And then probably the best way you could look that up is either social media to find different ideas and tools, because there's people that spend all their time just thinking of those different things and how that can be introduced to different attributes for that individual kid for different age ranges. But that's just something that's unique and cool that as a parent you can start to try with your kids and your family.
Instead of the iPad.
Yeah,
For sure.
absolutely.
For sure. This next one I really like that you brought up, Doc. What advice would you give to someone who feels they have lost their sense of play? And I'm going to touch on my experience after you.
Oh, lost the sense of play. I think first off, you have to find something that you find enjoyable and get into a setting that you feel comfortable either exploring or trying either something new or something that you enjoy. That's going to be a huge priority. In terms of the other sense of play, if you have friends that maybe enjoy certain topics, but you are new to that topic, or whether that's woodworking, crafting, gardening, having their emotional, fun, and joyful state of what they enjoy can automatically rub off on you. If you enjoy that, either that calm state, that state that whatever activity puts you in, can subsequently help you move in that same direction for play, for enjoying life, or for enjoying that activity. That's probably a really good way that I can think about it. I guess off the top of my head, is there anything that you can think of? I'm sure that might be
So I actually was this person. I didn't know that I had lost my sense of play, but I was working with a therapist, and I remember to this day that session. And she asked me, she said, "Dr. Addy, do you play?" Because I had been going to her because I had been really stressed. I had been working 100-hour weeks, and I forgot the work-life balance talk that we received in
Yeah.
school the second we got in there. And they mentioned to Doc and I, you got to figure out balance because just studying and working on school is going to drive you nuts. You got to have some balance. And unfortunately, I take everything a little serious and I just work my butt off, and that's just something that I do. But I sacrificed play and it caught up with me. And my therapist was just really confused, and she was asking me, she goes, do you play? And I was like, no, what do you mean play? What does that even mean? And she's like, do you play, Dr. Addy? And I'm like, and I didn't even know what she was talking about. And we had finally gone back and forth, and I had realized that I had sacrificed play. And to me, listening to this podcast, had I not understood what that would, play meant all the things that we talked about. And I forgot about that. And so getting back into play was tough for me because then I had to give up productivity at work, or I had to give up, I guess I had to give up the throttle that I had put that part of my life at. And so it's not to say that I wasn't going to achieve what I was going to achieve, but it just wasn't going to be achieved as soon as I wanted it to. And that's balance. And had I not done that, I would have been so burnt out. I wouldn't have had any relationships. I would have probably been less healthy. I wouldn't have been working. There's just so many other things had I not throttled back and put off into play. And how I did that, it wasn't very hard. I just really just time management. And then, of course, structuring my time to do the things that fell out of my routine. And I did it one at a time. First and foremost, I chose to prioritize the gym as something as I dialed back. Then as I figured that out, I then prioritized nature. So I went and golfed more. Then I prioritized meeting up with friends, and then COVID hit, so that kind of killed it. But then back to, I knew what to do again, because I was like, okay, got to do this, got to do this. The only thing I think I could have advice for is you don't have to schedule 6 events a week to get started. Try a couple times a month, then maybe go weekly. You don't have to dive in head first, having 10 events a month. That's where I would recommend you start. But if you feel that you're burnt out, you don't have any enjoy. When was the last time you laughed? Ask yourself that, and then choose. Okay, how do I get there? And I think that's where you need to start as a thought process on someone. If you just feel like you're not able to have any balance, if you don't have any balance in your life right now.
Oh, that's such a smart point. And I really like how you started there too, and just even getting through those situations that can bog you down mentally, whether it's like stress or again, almost feel like you're just stuck to a certain extent. And that's where Doc said going to see someone and talking through this, or having a friend that you can have this conversation with, just offload a little bit. But yeah, really good point on also starting slower, once a month, maybe once every few weeks, and building up from there.
Yeah.
Really good point.
Yes, absolutely. Doc, how can we encourage a culture of playfulness in our communities and workplaces?
Ooh,
This is a good question.
It is a really good question. I almost would say either having time set aside, whether it's Friday afternoons, Sundays, a time during the day to just go out and enjoy life, just get out into the community. God, I feel it's going to change from person to person, family to family. Even hosting like community events, workplace events, having a grill out session, bring everyone together, get them out of their everyday schedules.
Yes.
I think creating that change will help spark just a little bit of a relaxed state. Obviously, watching the environment of any stressful individuals or times that there could be stress during this time point. But yeah, I guess that'd probably be my 2 cents on that one. But
yeah, I think for me, hearing that question has changed throughout my lifetime, but in this present state, I would take it in 2 parts. Number one, I would also look at other people in my community, my circle, and not only try to help myself, but if I noticed that they are also maybe more stressed when I talk to them, be like, okay, I think I want to also help them as I help myself. Let's maybe you be the spark and say, hey, invite them to do something. God knows they probably need it too. That's just, your circle is a circle for a reason. You're probably going through similar things. So that would be number one, where reach out, grab someone that you want to help in your circle, go out, do something, maybe all of them. Hey, who knows what? And just continue to look into them and try to help them out too. Because giving and helping is one of the highest forms of frequency. And it really does raise your energetic vibration. And number two would be, think long term. Okay, we all know we're a little busy, individuals are busy, and everyone's got a busy life. And we all think that we're so busy, but plan ahead and be like, you know what? Let's say 6 months, 8 months, a year, let's all meet up, Airbnb, pick a cabin. It doesn't have to be expensive, doesn't have to be this huge resort. You don't got to go to Mexico. Pick a cabin. For us, I'm from Minnesota. Pick 5, 6 buddies and say, hey guys, in a year, let's go Airbnb. We'll do some fishing. We'll just hang out. It doesn't have to be this extravagant event. Just coming together sometimes is just a great way. And plan ahead and just have that built in. Sometimes, just that one huge act in 1 year of coming together can be huge for a few months moving forward. I'm still running off of this time that I had got together with a bunch of my friends who I hadn't seen for 5 some years. And all of us had the same idea. And it was, why did we wait 5 years to do this? And so now it's like, all right, let's not wait 5 years. Let's try to set up something at least once a year. And how can then we can, spark that time together, that community, and things that, heck, there had been friends that had 2 kids that I haven't even seen, heard, just the fact that I had been so out of their lives for that long, there was regret. For sure there was. And so I want to be, a part of that more frequently.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I could top. That was good.
No worries.
That was good. If you guys have found awesome benefit to this, we'd love a like, subscribe, share, comment below on any questions that you may have.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts on play. How are you guys playing? How are you changing your lives? What things are you doing post-COVID that has maybe changed? And we'd love to create a little bit of discussion on that. Yeah, please comment, like, subscribe, share. We appreciate every single one of you guys. Thank you guys so much. And we will see you next time. Doc, until then, you guys have a great day.
Disclaimer, the content provided in this health podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Reliance on any information provided in this podcast is solely at your own risk. The creators and hosts of this podcast are not responsible for any actions or decisions you may take based on the information presented.
Thanks for joining us on The Functional Code. For more evidence-based health insights, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Remember, your journey to a healthier you begins with understanding the functional code. Until next time, stay well, stay informed, and embrace the science of living well.